The shuttle screamed through the atmosphere, alarms blaring in every direction. Dae-sung gripped the controls with white knuckles as the vessel spun out of control. Red warning lights flashed across the cockpit, and smoke poured from the damaged navigation panel. He had been conducting a routine survey of the uncharted planet below when the systems suddenly failed. No explanation, no time to react, just chaos. The forest canopy rushed up to meet him. Massive trees with purple and blue leaves stretched toward the sky, their branches thick as highways. Dae-sung pulled back on the controls, trying to slow the descent, but the shuttle refused to respond. He braced himself as the first impact hit. The shuttle tore through branches, spinning sideways. Metal shrieked against wood. The harness cut into his shoulders as he was thrown forward. Then back, then sideways. Everything went black. When Dae-sung opened his eyes, pain radiated through his ribs. He coughed and tasted blood. The cockpit was crushed on one side, sparks dripping from exposed wires. Through the cracked windscreen, he saw thick forest in every direction. He was alive somehow. His training kicked in. Check for injuries first. He ran his hands over his body. Bruised ribs, a cut on his forehead, and a twisted ankle, but nothing broken. Lucky. He unbuckled the harness and kicked open the emergency hatch. Fresh air rushed in, sweet and cool. The gravity felt lighter than Earth, making each movement slightly easier despite his injuries. Dae-sung climbed out onto the forest floor and looked around. The shuttle had carved a path of destruction through the trees before coming to rest in a small clearing. Debris was scattered everywhere. His communication equipment was completely destroyed. The distress beacon was crushed under a fallen panel. The survival kit, thankfully, had survived in its reinforced compartment. He pulled it out and took inventory. Water purification tablets, energy bars, a medical kit, a thermal blanket, and a small plasma cutter for emergencies. Not much, but it would keep him alive for a few weeks if he was careful. The planet was beautiful in a way that made him uneasy. Everything glowed faintly, even in daylight. The leaves shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. Strange flowers released puffs of golden pollen that floated like tiny stars. The air hummed with insect sounds, but different from Earth insects. These sounds were musical, almost like a choir singing in the distance. Dae-sung limped away from the crash site, looking for water. His training said to stay near the crash, but instinct told him to move. Something about this place felt watched. He found a stream after 20 minutes of careful walking. The water was crystal clear and ran over smooth stones that glowed with soft blue light. He tested it with his scanner. The device flickered but gave a positive reading. Safe to drink. He set up a basic camp near the stream. The thermal blanket became a simple tent. He cleaned his wounds with water and applied bandages from the medical kit. As he worked, the forest grew darker. The suns, yes, there were 2 of them, sank below the horizon. But the darkness was not complete. Everything began to glow brighter. The trees, the flowers, the moss on the rocks, even the water in the stream glowed with soft colors. It was the most beautiful thing Dae-sung had ever seen. It was also terrifying. He ate an energy bar and tried to think. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, would notice he was missing in about 3 days. They would send a search party, but this planet was huge, and his shuttle had been blown off course during the malfunction. They might search for weeks before finding him. He needed to survive until then. He needed to stay calm. As night deepened, the sounds of the forest changed. The musical insects grew quiet. Something else moved in the darkness. Footsteps, but not animal footsteps. These were deliberate and careful. Dae-sung's heart pounded. He reached for the plasma cutter and activated it. The small blue flame provided light and could be used as a weapon if needed. Then he saw them. Eyes, dozens of eyes glowing in the darkness, surrounding his camp in a wide circle. They were positioned high up, at least 7 feet off the ground. Not animals. These were intelligent beings, and they were watching him. Dae-sung stood slowly, keeping the plasma cutter visible but not threatening. He raised his other hand in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. The eyes blinked, but did not move closer. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then, one figure stepped forward into the clearing. She was tall, at least 6.5 feet, with skin that shimmered like oil on water, shifting through shades of blue and silver. Her face was humanoid but different. Larger eyes, sharper cheekbones, and elaborate silver markings that looked painted but seemed to be part of her skin. She wore clothing made from woven fibers that glowed faintly, and she carried a spear with a crystalline tip. More figures emerged from the forest, 20, 30, maybe 40 of them. All tall, all female in appearance, all armed. They formed a semicircle around Dae-sung's camp, blocking any escape. The leader stepped closer, studying him with intense curiosity. She tilted her head, and her eyes, which were deep violet with no visible pupils, scanned him from head to toe. She spoke. The language was like nothing Dae-sung had ever heard. It was musical and flowing, with clicks and humming sounds mixed in. He had no idea what she was saying. He lowered the plasma cutter slowly and placed it on the ground. Then he placed his hands over his heart and bowed slightly, another gesture he hoped translated across species. The leader watched him carefully. She turned to the others and spoke in that strange language. Several of them responded, their voices creating a chorus of sound. Then the leader turned back to Dae-sung. She pointed at him, then at the crashed shuttle visible through the trees, then at the sky. She was asking where he came from. Dae-sung pointed at the sky and nodded. He traced an arc with his finger, showing the shuttle falling. He pointed at himself and said, "Human. Earth." He knew she would not understand the words, but maybe the gesture would help. The leader considered this. Then she made a decision. She spoke a command, and 2 warriors stepped forward. They picked up his survival kit and plasma cutter. Another warrior gestured for him to follow. The leader turned and walked into the forest, and the others followed. Dae-sung hesitated. He could run. But where would he go? His ankle was twisted, and he was surrounded by armed warriors in a forest he did not know. And something told him these beings were not planning to kill him. Not yet, anyway. They were curious. He was curious, too. He followed them into the glowing forest, limping on his bad ankle. The warriors formed a protective circle around him as they walked. They moved silently through the trees, following paths that Dae-sung could not see. The leader, who he would later learn was named Hana, led them deeper into the alien wilderness. Dae-sung did not know if he was a prisoner or a guest. He did not know if he would survive the night. But he knew one thing for certain. His life had just changed forever. The village appeared after an hour of walking through the glowing forest. Dae-sung stopped in his tracks, unable to believe what he was seeing. Massive trees, even larger than the ones near his crash site, had been hollowed out and transformed into homes. Bridges made of woven vines connected the structures, creating a network of walkways high above the forest floor. Soft lights glowed from windows carved into the bark. Gardens grew on platforms between the trees, filled with plants that pulsed with bioluminescent colors. It was like something from a dream. The warriors led him across a main bridge toward the largest tree at the center of the village. Faces appeared in windows and doorways as they passed. More of the tall, shimmering beings, all of them female, all of them staring at him with wide eyes. Some looked frightened, others looked curious. Children, smaller versions of the adults, pointed at him and whispered to each other. The leader brought him into the central tree. Inside was a large chamber with smooth wooden walls that curved upward into darkness. The floor was covered in soft moss that glowed faintly under his feet. Carved furniture sat around the edges of the room, and strange symbols were painted on the walls. The leader pointed to a cushioned seat, indicating he should sit. Dae-sung obeyed, grateful to rest his twisted ankle. She spoke to the others, and most of the warriors left. 3 remained. The leader, a younger warrior who kept her hand on her weapon, and an elderly being who entered through a side passage. The elderly one was shorter than the others, her shimmer more silver than blue, and she walked with a staff made from twisted wood. Her eyes were cloudy with age, but they were sharp as they studied Dae-sung. The elder spoke to the leader in that musical language. They discussed something while glancing at him repeatedly. Finally, the leader turned to Dae-sung. She pointed at herself and said something that sounded like Hana. She repeated it twice. Dae-sung understood. A name. He pointed at himself and said, Dae-sung. He repeated it clearly. Hana nodded. She pointed at the younger warrior and said what sounded like Mirai. Then she pointed at the elder and said Bora. Dae-sung repeated each name, trying to pronounce them correctly. The 3 aliens seemed pleased with this progress, but then came the difficult part. How could they communicate without a shared language? Dae-sung reached slowly into his pocket. Mirai immediately raised her weapon, but Hana held up a hand to stop her. Dae-sung pulled out a small damaged tablet from his survival kit. It was cracked and barely functional, but the translator program might still work if he could get enough data. He activated the tablet. The screen flickered to life. He pulled up a drawing program and began to sketch. He drew a simple picture of the planet, then a small ship approaching it. Then he drew the ship crashing. He pointed to the drawing, then to himself, then to the sky. Hana watched carefully, then nodded. She understood. Over the next hour, they communicated through drawings and gestures. Hana drew pictures of her people, the Hanul tribe. She drew their village, their way of life. Dae-sung noticed something strange in her drawings. Every single figure was female. He saw no males anywhere. He drew a picture of humans, showing both male and female figures. He pointed to the male and himself, then to the female, and gestured around the room questioningly. Hana looked confused. She consulted with Bora, and they spoke rapidly. Bora's eyes widened with understanding. She took the tablet and drew more carefully. She drew only females, then drew strange energy patterns around them. Then she drew small children appearing from the energy. Dae-sung stared at the drawing. They reproduced without males. Through some kind of energy process? His mind raced with questions. How was that possible? What kind of biology allowed that? Was it natural or technological? But he had no way to ask these questions yet. He simply nodded to show he understood the basic idea. Mirai had been watching all of this with suspicion, but now her expression changed to curiosity. She stepped closer and pointed at Dae-sung's clothes, his boots, his hair. She had never seen anything like him. To her, he was as alien as she was to him. She reached out carefully and touched his hand. Her skin was warm and smooth, and where she touched him, her shimmer seemed to pulse brighter. She pulled back quickly, startled. Hana and Bora noticed the reaction. They spoke urgently. Bora came closer and gestured for Dae-sung to extend his hand. He did. She touched his palm, and the same thing happened. Her shimmer brightened. She looked amazed and said something to Hana that sounded important. Days passed in this way. Dae-sung was given a room in the central tree. It was comfortable, with a bed made from soft plant fibers and a window overlooking the forest. But he was not free to leave. Mirai was assigned to guard him, following him everywhere he went. At first, she was cold and suspicious. She watched him like he might attack at any moment. But gradually, her attitude changed. Dae-sung spent his time learning their language. He recorded words on his damaged tablet whenever Hana or Bora spoke. He repeated phrases until he could say them correctly. The Hanul language was difficult, with sounds his human throat was not designed to make, but he made progress. After a week, He could say basic things. Thank you. Water. Food. Where? The village members were fascinated by him. They would gather outside his room, watching through the window. Children were especially curious. They would giggle and run away when he looked at them. Some of the adult Hano started bringing him gifts. Strange fruits, woven bracelets, carved wooden figures. They would leave them outside his door and disappear before he could thank them. Mireille became less hostile as she watched him. She saw that he was not dangerous. He was just lost and trying to survive. One day she sat down next to him as he practiced their language. She pointed at his tablet and the pictures of Earth he had saved on it. Cities, oceans, mountains, people. She looked amazed. She had never imagined other worlds could be so different. Dae-sung showed her pictures of his family, his mother, his brother, his friends from the ship. Mireille studied each face carefully. Then she pointed at a picture of his mother and him together. She pointed to herself and made a gesture like she was asking a question. Dae-sung understood. She was asking if humans had mothers. He nodded and tried to explain with his limited vocabulary. Yes. Mother, father, two make child. Mireille's eyes went wide. She called Hana over and tried to explain what she had learned. Hana listened, then looked at Dae-sung with new understanding. She spoke to Bora, and the elder nodded slowly. They had known males existed in other species, but they had never met one. They had never understood what that meant. On the 10th day, Bora came to his room with Hana. They brought a carved wooden chair and set it in the center of the room. Hana gestured for Dae-sung to sit. He did, feeling nervous. Bora began to speak in their language, but slowly, using simple words. Dae-sung understood most of it. She said that he had been brought to their village as an unknown. They did not know if he was friend or enemy, but their law was clear. Any outsider must face the speaking. Every member of the tribe must speak with the outsider alone, one at a time. They must judge his heart. Only after everyone has spoken could the tribe decide his fate. Dae-sung felt his stomach drop. How many people lived in this village? He had seen at least 60, maybe more. Each one would question him. It could take weeks. But he had no choice. He nodded and said in their language, "I understand. I will speak." Hana looked relieved. She had been worried he would refuse. She explained that the speaking would begin tomorrow. She would be first, then the other important members, then everyone else. He must answer honestly. He must show them who he truly was. That night, Dae-sung could not sleep. He lay in his bed, staring at the glowing ceiling, wondering what questions they would ask. Wondering if he would pass their test. Wondering if he would ever see his home again. The speaking began at dawn. Dae-sung was brought to a grove at the center of the village. Ancient trees formed a circle around a clearing where two carved chairs sat facing each other. Flowers grew in patterns on the ground, and the morning light made everything glow with soft colors. The entire tribe gathered at the edges of the grove, watching silently as Hana took her seat across from him. She looked at him for a long moment before speaking. Her voice was serious, and Dae-sung had to concentrate hard to understand her words with his still limited grasp of their language. She asked him about war. Did humans make war? Did they kill each other? Did they destroy their own kind for land or resources or power? Dae-sung could have lied. He could have painted humanity as peaceful and perfect, but something told him these people would know if he was dishonest. He answered truthfully, using simple words and gestures when his vocabulary failed him. Yes, humans made war. Yes, they killed each other. Yes, they fought over land and resources. But they also made peace. They learned. They tried to become better. They reached for the stars, hoping to be more than their violent past. Hana listened without expression. She asked more questions. What did he want? Why had he come to this planet? Would more humans follow him? Dae-sung explained his mission. He was a scout. He searched for new worlds. He gathered information. His ship was far away, but yes, they would look for him. They would come eventually. When Hana finished, she stood and placed her hand over her heart, a gesture of respect. Then she left, and Mirai took her place. The young warrior looked nervous. She sat down and did not speak for several minutes. Finally, she asked questions that were completely different from Hana's. She asked about families. What was a father? What did fathers do? How did human children grow up with both mother and father? Did it make them happier? Did it make them more complete? Dae-sung tried to explain. He told her about his own father, how he had taught Dae-sung to fix machines and to look at stars, how his father and mother worked together to raise him and his brother, how they were different, but both necessary. Mirai listened like she was hearing about magic. Her eyes were wide, and she leaned forward in her seat. She asked if he missed his family. Dae-sung felt a knot form in his throat. He nodded. Yes. He missed them terribly. He did not know if he would ever see them again. Mirai's expression softened. She understood loss, even if the details were different. When she stood to leave, she touched his shoulder briefly. It was a gesture of comfort. Next came Nari, a warrior with sharp features and suspicious eyes. She did not sit. She stood in front of him with her arms crossed and fired questions like weapons. How did she know he was not a spy? How did she know he would not lead enemies to their village? How did she know his people would not destroy them? Her hostility was clear, and several of her questions were almost accusations. Dae-sung answered as calmly as he could. He had no way to prove his intentions. He could only give his word. He explained that humans had rules about first contact with new species. They were not supposed to interfere or harm, but he admitted that not all humans followed the rules. Some were greedy, some were cruel. He could not promise that his people would never be a threat, but he could promise that he personally meant no harm. Nari did not look satisfied, but she left without further comment. Bora came next. The elder moved slowly and sat with visible effort, but when she spoke, her voice was strong. She asked strange questions. She asked about his dreams. She asked if he believed in destiny. She asked if he thought his crash was an accident or something more. Dae-sung did not know how to answer that. He said he believed in chance, in randomness, in the chaos of the universe. But he also admitted that being here, meeting them, felt important somehow. Bora smiled at that. She said something about old prophecies and star-born strangers, but Dae-sung's language skills were not good enough to fully understand. She left him with more questions than answers. The speaking continued for days. Each member of the tribe took their turn. Some conversations were short, just a few questions. Others lasted for hours. A healer named Jiwon asked about human medicine. How did humans cure sickness? How long did they live? What happened when they died? She was fascinated by the differences between their biology and seemed to be taking mental notes throughout their conversation. An artisan named Yuna asked about human art. Did humans make music? Did they paint or sculpt? Did they tell stories? Dae-sung showed her pictures on his tablet. Earth paintings, sculptures, and architecture. He played a music file, a simple classical piece by a composer named Bach. Yuna listened with tears in her eyes. She said the music was beautiful and sad at the same time. She asked if she could hear it again. He played it 3 times before she finally left. A hunter asked about earth animals. A teacher asked about how human children learned. A builder asked about human construction. Each person brought their own curiosity, their own perspective. Dae-sung realized that despite living in a collective society, each Haneul was an individual with unique interests and dreams. But some conversations were harder. A young mother asked if human males could hurt people. Dae-sung had to admit yes, they could. Some did. She looked frightened and held her child closer. He tried to explain that not all males were violent, that many were gentle and kind, but he could see the fear in her eyes. That conversation stayed with him for days. An elderly Hanel asked if he was lonely. The question caught him off guard. He had been so focused on survival and learning their language that he had not thought about it. But yes, he was lonely. He was the only human on an alien world, unable to fully communicate, unsure of his future. He admitted this, and the elderly Hanil nodded sadly. She said she understood. Even surrounded by the tribe, she sometimes felt alone, too. After 2 weeks, the speaking was nearly finished. Dae-sung had spoken with almost everyone. His language skills had improved dramatically from all the conversation. He could now speak in full sentences and understand most of what was said to him. The tribe members had become familiar faces. He knew their names, their roles, their personalities. Mireille still guarded him, but now they talked as friends. She would bring him food and sit with him while he ate. She asked endless questions about Earth and human life. She was particularly interested in the concept of romance, of choosing a partner to love. The Hanul did not have this concept. They loved their tribe as a whole, but not individuals in that special way. Mirai said it sounded beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Jiwon came to check on him regularly, treating his twisted ankle and monitoring his health. She was amazed that he was healing correctly despite being so far from his own world. She asked if she could study his biology more, and he agreed. She took samples of his blood and skin, always gentle and respectful. She told him that his presence had taught her more about life in the universe than years of study ever could. Yuna brought him gifts she had made, carved figures that looked like him, woven bracelets in colors that reminded her of his stories about Earth. She said she was trying to capture human art style in her work. She asked him to tell her more stories so she could create more pieces. He told her about cities and oceans, about mountains and deserts, about the diversity of Earth, and she listened like he was describing paradise. On the final day of the speaking, a small child came to sit with him. She could not have been more than 6 years old in human terms. She did not ask complicated questions. She simply asked if he liked living with them. Dae-sung felt emotion well up in his chest. He knelt down to her level and said yes. He did. Very much. She smiled and handed him a flower, then ran away, giggling. That night, the tribe gathered in the sacred grove. They would vote on his fate in the morning. Hana had explained the options. They could send him away, let him stay as a permanent guest, or execute him as a potential threat. Dae-sung could not sleep. He lay in his bed listening to the sounds of the village, wondering which choice they would make. He thought about his ship, about his crew who might be searching for him. He thought about Earth, so far away. But he also thought about Mirai's questions about love, about Jiwon's curiosity, about Yuna's art, about the child's flower. These people had become more than just aliens to him. They had become something else, something important. Tomorrow he would learn if he lived or died, if he stayed or left. But tonight, for the first time since crashing on this planet, Dae-sung felt something unexpected. He felt at home. The council gathered at dawn in the sacred grove. Every adult member of the tribe formed a circle while Hana stood at the center with Bora beside her. Dae-sung waited outside the circle with Mireille, his heart pounding. The voting would happen in their traditional way. Each tribe member would place a colored stone in a bowl. White for sending him away, blue for letting him stay, black for execution. The bowl was passed around the circle. Dae-sung could not see what colors people chose. He watched their faces instead. Some looked at him with kindness. Others would not meet his eyes. Nari placed her stone with a firm gesture that made his stomach clench. When the bowl returned to Hana, she counted the stones while Bora watched. The result was almost unanimous. 53 blue stones, 5 white stones, 2 black stones. The tribe had chosen to let him stay. Relief flooded through Dae-sung so powerfully that his knees nearly buckled. Mireille grabbed his arm to steady him, and she was smiling. The tribe began to chant something in their language, a welcoming song. Several members approached him to touch his hand or shoulder in congratulation. But the celebration was short-lived. A scout burst into the grove, breathing hard. She spoke urgently to Hana, pointing at the sky. The entire tribe fell silent. Hana's face went pale, and she turned to Dae-sung with an expression of betrayal and fear. She spoke quickly, and Dae-sung caught enough words to understand. A ship, human ship, coming here. His people had found him. The tribe erupted into frightened conversation. Nari immediately started shouting that they should have voted black. Others argued back. Children were pulled close by their mothers. Bora raised her staff and struck it against the ground 3 times. The sound echoed like thunder, and everyone fell silent. Bora spoke in a voice that carried despite her age. She reminded them that they had voted. They had accepted Dae-sung. Now they must face the consequences together. She turned to Dae-sung and asked him directly in their language, "Will your people hurt us?" Dae-sung wanted to say no. He wanted to promise that humans would never harm them. But he could not lie. He explained as clearly as his language skills allowed that humans had rules about new species. They were supposed to observe and not interfere, but humans were also capable of greed and fear. If they saw the Hanul as a resource or a threat, some might try to exploit or harm them. He could not make promises for all of humanity. The tribe looked terrified. Hana asked how long they had. The scouts said the ship would arrive in 2 days. It was descending slowly, probably searching for the crash site. Nari demanded they hide Dae-sung or kill him. Several others agreed, but Mireille stepped forward and argued back. She said Dae-sung had been honest with them. He had shared his knowledge. He had shown them respect. Betraying him now would make them no better than the humans they feared. The argument went back and forth for hours. Finally, Hana made a decision. They would give Dae-sung a choice. He could go to meet his rescue ship alone and tell them anything he wanted about the Hanul. He could lead them to the village or warn them away, or he could stay with the tribe and help them hide from the humans. Whatever he chose, they would respect it. But he must choose now. Dae-sung felt torn in 2. Part of him wanted rescue desperately. He wanted to see his crew again, to return to his ship, to go home to Earth eventually. But another part of him thought about what would happen if he led humans here. Even with the best intentions, first contact could go wrong. The Hanul's location would be recorded. Their planet would be marked for study. More ships would come. Scientists, traders, tourists. The Hanul's peaceful life would be destroyed. He looked at Mireille. She was watching him with tears in her eyes. She had become his friend, maybe his closest friend. Jiwan stood nearby, her hands clasped together nervously. Yuna was there too, holding one of her carvings. The child who had given him the flower peeked out from behind her mother. These people had welcomed him. They had let him live when they could have killed him. How could he betray them? But his crew was his family too. Hyunwoo, his best friend, was probably on that ship. The captain who had trusted him with this mission. The navigator who told terrible jokes. The engineer who had taught him to fix shuttles. They were worried about him. They had come to rescue him. How could he lie to them? Dae-sung asked for time to think. Hana gave him until sunset. He went to his room in the central tree and sat on his bed, head in his hands. Mireille followed him but did not speak. She just sat beside him, her presence a comfort and a complication at the same time. Finally, she broke the silence. She said in their language, which Dae-sung now understood well, "I have learned something from you, about choice, about love. In our tribe, we never choose. We are born, we live, we serve the tribe, we die. It is peaceful, but also empty sometimes. You told me humans choose partners, they choose friends, they choose their path. I did not understand before, but now I think I do." She looked at him with those large violet eyes. "I think I have chosen you, not as tribe, not as duty, as Mirai choosing Dae-sung. Does that make sense in human words?" Dae-sung felt his chest tighten. He understood what she was trying to say. In a society with no concept of romantic love, she had developed feelings for him. The impossible had happened. He did not know if it was truly love or just fascination with something new and different. But it was real to her, and that mattered. He took her hand carefully. "It makes sense," he said in her language, "and it makes my choice harder." Before Mirai could respond, Jiwon rushed into the room. She looked excited and frightened at the same time. She said she had been studying the samples she took from Dae-sung. She had made a discovery. The energy that allowed the Hanol to reproduce, the energy that flowed through their planet and their bodies, reacted to Dae-sung. When Hanul touched him, their shimmer brightened. She thought she knew why now. The energy was looking for genetic diversity. The Hanul had been reproducing the same way for thousands of years, and their population was slowly declining. They were too similar to each other. But Dae-sung was completely different. His presence, his biology, it excited the energy. Jiwon believed that if they studied this further, they might find a way to save their species. Dae-sung could be the key to their survival. This changed everything. Dae-sung was not just a stranger they had accepted. He was potentially their salvation, but that also meant they needed him. If he left, they might lose this opportunity forever. As the sun began to set, Dae-sung made his decision. He would go to meet his rescue ship, but he would not tell them about the Hanul village directly. He would claim the planet was dangerous or unsuitable for colonization. He would misdirect them. It was not a perfect plan. His friend Hyunwoo knew him too well and might see through the lie. But he had to try. He told Hana his plan. She looked relieved and terrified at the same time. She insisted on coming with him, hidden in the forest, in case things went wrong. Mirai demanded to come too. Nari, surprisingly, volunteered as well. She said if Dae-sung was going to betray them, she wanted to be there to kill him herself. Dae-sung appreciated her honesty at least. Bora pulled him aside before they left. She told him the full prophecy she had mentioned during the speaking. "A stranger from the stars will bring both destruction and salvation. The tribe must choose which face to see." She said the prophecy never explained how to make that choice. But she believed that Dae-sung himself was not the danger. The danger was what came after him. How they handled first contact would determine if humanity became friend or enemy. That night, Dae-sung lay awake one final time in the village. Tomorrow, he would face his people and lie to them to protect the Hanul. He would choose these aliens over his own species. The weight of that decision pressed down on him like gravity. But when he thought about Mirai's questions about love, about Jiwon's hope for her people, about the child's flower, he knew it was the right choice, even if it cost him everything. The landing site was 3 hours from the village by foot. Dae-sung led the way with Hana, Mirai, and Nari following close behind. They moved through the glowing forest in tense silence. The rescue ship was scheduled to land at midday, and they needed to be in position before then. Hana had insisted on bringing 20 more warriors who would hide in the trees, ready to respond if things went wrong. Dae-sung's stomach churned with anxiety. He had rehearsed his story 100 times. He would say the planet had dangerous geological instability. He would say the crash damaged his equipment so badly he could not properly survey. He would recommend they mark this world as unsuitable for further study. Simple. Clean. A lie that would protect the Hanul. But guilt gnawed at him. He was about to betray his species, his training, his duty. The anthropological corps had strict rules. When you discovered intelligent life, you reported it immediately. No exceptions. What he was planning was not just against protocol, it was a crime. He could face imprisonment if Earth ever found out. They reached the old crash site an hour before the ship was due to arrive. The shuttle wreckage was still there, torn metal glinting in the double sunlight. Dai Sung positioned himself near it while Hana and the others melted into the forest. Even standing right where they had hidden, he could not see them. They were excellent at remaining invisible. The rescue ship descended exactly on time. It was a standard scout vessel, larger than a shuttle but smaller than a full exploration ship. The engines kicked up dust and debris as it settled onto the ground 50 meters from the crash site. The boarding ramp lowered with a hiss, and 3 figures emerged in environment suits. Dae Sung recognized them immediately. Hyun-woo, his best friend and fellow scout, Captain In-ha, who led their survey team, and Somin, the medical officer. His heart leaped at seeing them. Hyun-woo spotted him and ran forward, pulling off his helmet. "Dae Sung, you're alive!" Hyun-woo grabbed him in a tight hug. "We thought you were dead. The shuttle's tracking signal cut out completely. We've been searching for 3 weeks." 3 weeks. Dae Sung had lost track of time in the village. It felt like both longer and shorter than that. Captain In-ha approached more cautiously, her helmet still on. "Are you injured? Do you need immediate medical attention?" "I'm fine," Dae Sung said. His voice sounded strange after speaking the Hanul language for so long. "Twisted ankle from the crash, but it healed. I've been surviving on the emergency kit." Somin scanned him with a medical device. "Your vitals are good. Better than expected, actually. You must have found clean water and edible plants." She looked around at the lush forest. "This place is beautiful. The bioluminescence is remarkable." "It's unstable," Dae Sung said, forcing the lie out. "Seismic activity. I've recorded several quakes. Small ones, but they're increasing in frequency. I think this region is building towards something big, maybe volcanic." Hyun-woo frowned. "We didn't detect any seismic readings from orbit." Dae Sung's pulse quickened. "The equipment was damaged. I can't give you precise data. But I felt them. Trust me, this planet is not safe for long-term study." Captain In-ha studied him carefully. Something in her expression made Dae Sung nervous. She knew him well enough to tell when something was wrong. But before she could press further, Hyun-woo spoke up. "Well, we've got what we came for. Let's get you back to the ship and off this rock." Dae Sung felt relief start to build. It was working. They were going to leave. But then Hyun-woo noticed something. He walked past Dae Sung toward the tree line, squinting into the shadows. "Did you see that?" "Something moved in the trees." "Probably a local animal," Dae Sung said quickly. Too quickly. Hyun-woo turned to look at him. His best friend knew him better than anyone. "Dae Sung, what's going on? You're acting strange." "Nothing. I've just been alone for 3 weeks. It's been difficult." But Hyun-woo was not convinced. He took a step toward the forest. "I'm trained to spot movement. That was not an animal. That was something hiding deliberately." Nari chose that moment to lose patience. She emerged from the trees with her weapon raised, moving toward Hyun-woo in a protective stance. She thought he was threatening Dae Sung. Mireille followed her, trying to hold her back. Then Hana stepped into view, raising her hand to stop her warriors. Within seconds, the peaceful scene had turned into a standoff. Captain In-ha drew her sidearm. Somin backed toward the ship. Hyun-woo froze, staring at the tall, shimmering aliens. What are they?" Dae Sung stepped between the two groups, hands raised. "Wait! Everyone wait! They're not hostile! They saved my life! They're intelligent, peaceful! Please, don't shoot!" Captain In-ha did not lower her weapon, but she did not fire either. "You found an intelligent species, and you were not going to report it? Dae Sung, that's a violation of every protocol we have." "I know," Dae Sung said, "but you don't understand. They're vulnerable. They've hidden from the galaxy for thousands of years. If we report them, if Earth finds out, more ships will come. Scientists, corporations, tourists, their way of life will be destroyed. Hana stepped forward, her posture calm but firm. She spoke in the Hanul language, and Dae-sung translated. She says this is their home. They mean no harm to anyone. They only want to be left alone. Hyun-woo was staring at Hana with wide eyes. She's magnificent. They all are. Dae-sung, this is the discovery of a lifetime. We can't just pretend this never happened. Yes, we can, Dae-sung said desperately. We can say the planet was empty. We can protect them. Captain In-ha finally lowered her weapon. She studied Hana and the other Hanul carefully. 3 weeks ago, you would never have suggested this. You've changed. These people mean something to you now. Dae-sung did not deny it. Yes, they do. Before anyone could respond, Bora emerged from the forest. The ancient elder moved slowly, leaning on her staff, but there was power in her presence. Every Hanul warrior bowed slightly as she passed. She approached the humans without fear, studying each of them. Then she raised her staff and struck the ground. The forest responded. Energy pulsed outward in visible waves, making the plants glow brighter. Trees bent and twisted, forming a natural amphitheater around them. Flowers bloomed in seconds, filling the air with sweet scent. It was a display of their world's power, beautiful and intimidating at the same time. The humans stared in awe. Soman whispered, "Incredible. The biological and energy integration is beyond anything I've ever seen." Bora lowered her staff and spoke. Dae-sung translated her words carefully. She says they know they cannot stay hidden forever. The universe is too big, and eventually someone will find them, but they want to control how that happens. They want to choose who they trust. Captain In-ha looked at Bora with respect. What are you proposing? Through Dae-sung's translation, Bora explained her idea. Limited contact. A small number of humans allowed on the planet under strict rules. No mining, no colonization, no exploitation. Just cultural exchange and mutual learning. The Hanul would share knowledge of their biotechnology and energy systems. Humans would share knowledge of the wider galaxy and different worlds. They would learn from each other carefully and respectfully. It was a radical proposal. Nothing like this had ever been attempted. Usually, first contact meant Earth took control, establishing scientific outposts and military protection. But this was different. The Hanul were offering partnership, not submission. Captain In-ha was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I don't have authority to make this decision. I would need to take this proposal to Earth Command and the Anthropological Corps Council." "But you could recommend it," Dae-sung said. "You could advocate for it." "Captain, this is a chance to do first contact the right way, not as conquerors or colonizers, but as equals." Hyun-woo touched Captain In-ha's arm. "He's right. This could change everything about how we approach new species. We should at least try." Soman nodded. "The medical knowledge alone could be revolutionary. If they share willingly, we could learn so much." Captain In-ha looked at each of her crew, then at the Hanul, then at Dae-sung. Finally, she nodded. "All right, I'll take the proposal to Earth. But Dae-sung, you're coming with us. You'll need to testify about what you've experienced here. You'll need to be our ambassador between species." Dae-sung felt his heart sink. He had to leave. He had to go back to the ship. Mireille stepped forward, understanding what was happening even though she could not speak the human language. She looked at Dae-sung with those violet eyes, and he saw fear there. Fear that he would leave and never return. He took her hand and spoke in the Hanul language. "I'll come back. I promise. I'll make them understand. I'll make sure they treat your people with respect. And then I'll come back." Mireille nodded, but tears slipped down her shimmering face. Jiwon came forward and handed him a small container. She spoke, and Dae-sung translated for the others. She says this contains samples of their energy-reactive biology for Earth scientists to study. A gesture of trust. Yuna gave him one of her carvings, a figure that looked like him standing beside a figure that looked like Mirai. "So you remember," she said simply in the Hanoul language. The child who had given him the flower ran up and hugged his leg, then ran away crying. Dae-sung felt his own eyes burning with tears. Hana approached last. She placed her hand over her heart in respect. She spoke formally, and Dae-sung translated for his crew. "She says I am now a bridge between our worlds. I carry both human and Hanoul trust. It's a heavy responsibility, but she believes I can carry it." Dae-sung bowed to her in the Hanoul style. "I will not fail them," he said in their language. "Or you." The journey back to the ship was quiet. Dae-sung looked back once and saw the Hanoul standing at the edge of the forest, watching him leave. Mirai raised her hand in farewell. He raised his in return. 6 months passed. 6 months of meetings with Earth Command, with the Anthropological Core Council, with scientists and politicians and diplomats. Dae-sung testified for hours about the Hanoul culture, their technology, their desires for limited contact. He advocated passionately for Bora's proposal. He argued that humanity had a chance to prove they could be better than their history of colonization and exploitation. It was not easy. Many officials wanted to establish a military presence. Others wanted to send hundreds of scientists. But slowly, carefully, Dae-sung and Captain Inha built support for a different approach. A small embassy, a cultural exchange, strict rules, mutual respect. Finally, the proposal was approved. Dae-sung was assigned as lead ambassador. He would return to the Hanoul planet with a team of 5, a scientist, a medic, a diplomat, an engineer, and a security officer. They would live among the Hanoul, learn from them, and facilitate careful, respectful contact. When Dae-sung's ship descended to the planet's surface again, the entire tribe was waiting. He stepped off the boarding ramp, and Mirai was there. She had been chosen as the primary Hanoul liaison. She would work with him to manage the relationship between their peoples. Jiwon was there too, eager to collaborate with the human medical officer. Yuna brought new carvings showing humans and Hanoul working together. The child ran up and gave him another flower, giggling when he bent down to accept it. Bora watched from the edge of the gathering, leaning on her staff. She looked satisfied. The prophecy had come true, but they had chosen to see salvation instead of destruction. That evening, Dae-sung and Mirai walked through the glowing forest. He told her about Earth, about the debates and struggles to get approval for this arrangement. She told him about the tribe's preparations, about their excitement and fear at opening their world to outsiders. They reached the crystalline stream where Dae-sung had first made camp after his crash. He sat on the bank, and Mirai sat beside him. The forest glowed around them, beautiful and peaceful. "We're really doing this," Dae-sung said in the Hanoul language, which he now spoke fluently. "Two species learning to live together." "Yes," Mirai said. She took his hand, her shimmer brightening where they touched. "Building a bridge." Dae-sung smiled. "Building a bridge," he agreed. Above them, stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Earth was out there somewhere, distant but connected. The Hanoul village was behind them, preparing for a future they had never imagined. And Dae-sung sat between both worlds, holding the hand of someone who had become far more than just an alien. She had become his friend, his partner, his bridge to something new, and together they would build a future where humans and Hanouls stood side by side, learning from each other, growing together. It would not be easy. There would be challenges, misunderstandings, and mistakes, but they would face them together. Because sometimes, the best thing humanity could offer the universe was not conquest or control. Sometimes the best thing they could offer was a hand extended in friendship, a willingness to listen, and the courage to change. And that, Daesung thought as he sat beside Mireille under alien stars, was truly something worth fighting for.